So the Army Times put out an article saying that the XM-5, or it's going to be called now the XM-7, has failed. It will not be adopted by the troops. And I'm going to go over what the problems were that they said. Now, I've been dunking on this rifle since like day one because it was that ridiculous. This rifle was so ridiculous, it would be like if you took your parents out for the 30th anniversary to dinner, and your parents were like, hey, that girl over there laying on the bar letting dudes do body shots off of her, that's our neighbor. Her name's Stacy. You should see if she'd be interested in dating you because I think she's good wife material. Like, that's how obvious it was. Just looking at the concept of the rifle, I could go through and list all the problems it's going to have. And I called this since day one. Number one, the SIG rifle would be chose. Ding! Hit that one right. Number two, it will not be adopted to replace the M4. What it will happen is some will be bought up, they will put in specialty roles, and that's as far as it'll go. But let's take a look at Army Times and what they have to say about the new SIG rifle, the XM. Should I call it 5 or should I call it 7 now? Not really sure what I should do here. Anywho. Alright. So, the first problem is obviously reliability. Because they chose to go with an external piston system instead of what we call DI. Now, when you're talking about DI, that is still a piston system. The difference is the gas comes all the way back into the bolt carrier, and the piston is inside the bolt carrier, and then it exits the gas inside the bolt. The reason the XM5, I'm going to call it the XM5, that's what I'm used to. The reason the XM5 has reliability issues is because now the gas is vented off up front, which is great, especially for like suppressors or really hard full auto fire. The problem is in adverse conditions like snow, mud, sand, probably heavy smoke. What happens is instead of that gas exiting inside the receiver, pressurizing the receiver and essentially cleaning it out. And remember, we've all done testing on this. That is a fact. That is not a myth. A fact is that the DI system is more reliable in adverse conditions over a piston-operated system. All right, we're in a new position. Stovepipe. But we've shot. We came down, fixed our malfunction. Let's go to a new position. Dead trigger. All right, let's figure out what's causing the malfunction. Dust cover off. It's completely packed with. Change position. Change position. Change position. Change position. Bury it. Change position. All right, we're out of ammo. That's what it looks like. Plenty of stuff in there. Let's see if it'll function still. All right, let's see if it cleared itself out, because that's what I'm really curious about. My theory about a positive pressure wave makes a difference. There appears to be less, but it's not cleared out. Again, we've all tested this. So instead of the gas going in there, pressurizing the receiver, and blowing all the crap out and cleaning it out, like if you do the more you shoot, the cleaner it gets, well, it doesn't work that way with the piston-operated system. All the stuff stays there. There's no pressurization, so it just drags it into the receiver and smashes it into the chamber. So eventually what you'll do is you'll hit a point where there's just no more room. You're out of spec. The rifle is out of tolerance. It will no longer feed. It will no longer chamber. That sort of thing. Which brings me up to this video right here. I'm not trying to say what they're doing is stupid or wrong, but don't do this, especially in the cold. Oil increases viscosity when it gets cold. Oil, most oils, are detergents and dispersants. What's going to happen here is the oil is going to remove particulates, and then the dispersant is going to encapsulate it, which is great in a car engine because then it drops down to the bottom of the oil pan and it circulates through, gets caught by the oil filter, and that's how it keeps itself clean. However, in a firearm, especially DI or internal piston operated, when that gas blows out, that carbon would normally just be vented off into the atmosphere. Not a big deal. The little bit of carbon that stays by, well, what is carbon? That's graphite. It's a lubricant. It keeps you going. You put oil in there, and now that gas that would normally be blowing off turns into glorified bong water, or whatever you want to call it, turns into a black sludge, and it's going to cause malfunctions. Again, I'm not saying what they're doing is wrong. The most important thing is that you have confidence in your rifle, and if that's what they got to do to have confidence in their rifle, great. I'm telling you not to do it, especially in the cold. All you want to do is put a little dab of oil on a rag and wipe your bolt carrier down. The only thing it's doing is creating a barrier to keep moisture out of there to not allow it to rust. Do not run your ARs wet. I've made this mistake. And once you get in the really cold climates, especially below zero, it causes malfunctions. Again, I'm not saying what they're doing is wrong. But if you do it, especially in cold climates, you will have malfunctions. You will induce malfunctions. Anyways, pressing on. The next extremely important thing you got to know is if you'd like to help support this channel directly, go to shoponlytacticalfans.com where you can purchase the Freedom Star, or you can purchase the Only Tactical Fans logo, which can stick directly to your Cool Kids gear with a Velcro backing, and I even have PVC options, especially the High Alert patch. Alright, so now we've covered reliability. I'm not saying the XM-5 is not reliable, but compared to an AR-15, which is leaps and bounds ahead of most rifles in reliability, it doesn't stack up. That's a big problem with the SCAR-17 as well. The reliability isn't up to par with an AR-15. It's good. It's far better than like M14 or any of those other rifles, FN/FAL, but compared to an AR-15, it looks horrible. I mean, we're like at barely better than AK reliability. That's how bad it is. Completely not reliable in adverse conditions. Alright, so let's press on. The next problem is it cannot stop level 4 body armor. Again, I tested this multiple times. I don't know if the video still exists because YouTube's been going through with an eraser, just erasing videos, but I'm pretty sure it does. So to defeat body armor, your standard steel plate, you need 3,600 feet per second. You can get as low as 3,400. I've tested this, chronoed it, everything. And that you'll be able to penetrate with just any sort of lead bullet. Like ballistic tip, like the plastic tip bullets will penetrate a steel plate if you're moving above 3,400 feet per second. Now, you have to be close to it because when I threw in M85, which I chronoed, and it was at 3,000 feet per second, it did not penetrate. And that has a steel core penetrator. So the velocity is what matters here. It's got to be right around 3,400 feet per second. When the velocity would drop below that, I would just scratch it or ding it. Could not penetrate it. However, I did also try to penetrate level 4 body armor. I shot it as high as 3,900 feet per second and could not penetrate it. And there's two ways to penetrate armor. Number one is assisted. That is with a tungsten core. The problem, why they didn't want to use a tungsten core and why I agree with them 100%, and this article even covers, is China's still going to sell us tungsten if we're going to turn it into bullets and shoot it back at their troops. So are they going to continue to sell us tungsten when we're turning it into bullets and shooting it back at them? Probably not. So we're looking at ammunition that can penetrate body armor without tungsten. And that was the whole point of this entire program. Or at least that's what it was inferred on multiple levels. News, media, Congress, is that this new round, even though it doesn't hit the velocity standards, because you're going to have to be somewhere north of 4,000 feet per second. So like a sabot, a tungsten sabot would be ideal. Or you're going to have to use tungsten. And if you're going to use tungsten anyways, 5.56 and 308 can already do level 4 body armor. AP4, yeah, it can go through level 4 body armor. 308 tungsten sabot, it can go through almost 2 level 4 body armor plates. So what's the point? Why does it matter? And the velocity that round is netting will not do that job. It can't. Not without a tungsten penetrator. And again, then you might as well go with 5.56 or 308 because you know what? We already can do that. Throw a tungsten penetrator in them and yeah, they go right through level 4. The problem is we're trying to get away from tungsten because we're ultimately going to have to fight the Chinese. And the problem is the Chinese, well, you know what? I'll save this till the end. Let me just keep working on this rifle a little bit. So it doesn't penetrate body armor. It's not reliable. And now you have a weight problem. Because remember, the SCAR in its bare form weighed 8 pounds flat. The military took that and they said the rifle was too heavy. The XM-5 weighs 9.3 pounds flat. Now start putting on all your stuff. You got that scope, which a standard LPVO without rings, without any of that electronic doodads, weighs 2 pounds. Put on rings, all those electronic things that do things. Now you're probably somewhere around like 3 to 5 pounds. I don't know. They haven't released the weight yet, but I guarantee it's a tank. So, all right, so 9, 10, 11. Okay, now we're at 12 pounds. Well, what about a flashlight, accessories, pistol grip? Now we're probably around like 13. Throw on your suppressor, loaded magazine. Well, dude, now you're at like 16, 17 pounds for this rifle configured the way the military wants it configured so there could be this super soldier that can take on 700 to 1 situations. It's not going to happen. That's too heavy. Because when you add that much weight to your rifle, you have to take that much weight off your body. Yeah, if we were like, hey, carry this rifle, lose your plate carrier, lose your helmet to make up the difference in weight, that would work. But they're not going to do that. The rifle's too heavy. Like, without a doubt, way too heavy. The ballistic advantage over this cartridge, which is going to be a barrel burner, and it's going to be very hard on the rifles, compared to a 308, yeah, no doubt, there is a ballistic advantage there. However, it's not a head and shoulders advantage over, like, your standard 308 rounds. It's like the difference between, like, M855A1 and M855. Yeah, there's an advantage there, but is it really worth it? You're destroying your rifles faster. Is that advantage worth it? And they've come to the conclusion, no, there's not enough difference to make a difference. So, shit ballistic advantage, shit reliability, can't do what it was advertised to do without the aid of tungsten, which that's its problem on its own. And now you have logistical issues. So if we go up against China, it's going to be against a lot of troops. I'll get into that a little bit lower, but logistically, so all right, let's say they went with M193, because I know those specs. You're looking at a 55 grain projectile. Let's say they went with this XM something. It will be well over 100 grain projectile. So it's going to cost twice the material to produce a single projectile. And it's going to be well over twice the amount of gunpowder. So all right, we have this cartridge that takes twice as much to manufacture. Technology doesn't win wars. It can give you an edge. It can. But what wins wars is industry and population support. The amount of troops you can put in. How fast can you make stuff? How many people can you get to carry that stuff? So logistically, we're going to do half as good if this hypothetical rifle were to actually replace the M4. Now, you got the recoil concerns. With an M4, it's very light recoil. Teaching somebody to shoot an M4 as their first rifle is doable. Throwing them behind a 308, 18 years old, only shot rifles on Call of Duty, that's a problem. Taking a big caliber like that, you got to have proper footing, which they're not allowed to do. Because if you have proper footing, you're exposing your side to fire. What's the point of wearing a plate carrier if you're showing the only vulnerable part to the enemy? You have to stand firm, knees bent, and fire like this, which makes recoil control very tough. Because remember, you got to put your plate towards your enemy. You can't do a good stance. You can't put your weight on your back foot. Heels aligned, knees bent, plate towards the enemy, and you fire. And dude, there's no recoil control when you're like that. Trying to get a troop to be able to be even somewhat efficient with this rifle would be a task. And I'm talking a very large task. Training time would go up exponentially. Yes, in the hands of like special forces that may or may not even be wearing a plate carrier, going in there just to put the hurt on someone real quick, using a proper shooting stance. Oh my God, yeah, totally understandable. As a basic infantry rifle, no, it's a joke. All right, now let's talk about the scope. The XM-157. It is not an auto-aiming scope as the military had led us to believe. You have to aim at the target, you have to ping it, so you're going to shoot a visible laser against the enemies with probably thermal and night vision, so you're going to see a line coming right back to your scope. Okay, so now I ping the target, now it adjusts my reticle, now I can fire. And the crucial parts are made in China. You think they're still going to sell us the crucial parts to make these scopes when we're using it to go to war with them? Probably not. So that in itself is a problem. All right. Now, let's talk about, can we realistically win the war against China, and what is it going to look like? The war against China, we are looking at 700 to 1 odds. See, as a communist country, they can force people into military service. So let's pretend they force 50% of their population into military service, and they keep the other 50% back for industry. With our current military levels, that's 700 Chinese troops to every 1 American troop. That's terrible odds. The draft is going to come back, and because of this whole feminist movement, it sucks because it probably means my daughters are going to be drafted onto the front line. We're going to have every American participating in this. Now, like I said earlier, industry and the people win the war. Doesn't matter if you got an F-57974 fighter jet, that bitch has got to land. You can't sleep in that thing. When it lands, it's vulnerable. Same with our tanks. In Afghanistan, they knew they only had, 4 to 6 hours of fuel inside the tank, and they would have to refuel. So the tank would go by, they'd wait, oh, here comes the fuel truck, and take out the fuel truck, because that is the vulnerable spot. That is where it would hurt. Without the fuel, the tank ain't running. Without the tank running, it's useless. It's a giant freaking paperweight. So, troops, industry, that wins the war. Now the problem is the NFA. See, we were making drastic leaps forward in firearms technology until the NFA hit and they removed the civilian market. So there's no longer a paycheck behind coming up with something really useful because it violates the NFA. They can't sell it to the civilians pay for the research and development, so anything NFA related is off the table, which was the whole point of this rifle. It was a political tool. Remember, this is a 2-stamp rifle, not counting the stamp for full auto. You need 1 stamp for the silencer, you need 1 stamp because it's a short barrel rifle, and then you're bringing a new ammunition on the market for the military that will eliminate all the military surplus ammunition. So you make a rifle civilians can't have, and then you make ammunition the civilians can't have. The whole thing was a gun grab. It's absurd. That was the whole point of the rifle, is to remove our ability to use military surplus. So, because the NFA happened, we cannot do research and development at the rate we used to be able to do. Take, for example, the magazine ban. From 1994 to 2004, you know what happened the second 2004 lifted? We came out with the PMag, which revolutionized firearms. It changed everything. Most of the malfunctions we were having up to that point were magazine related. The PMag came out, anti-tilt followers, lightweight, had a window on the side. It changed the game. The PMag was in fact a game changer. The reason that came out is because there was no longer restrictions on civilians having magazines. So then the civilians were like, hey, companies, these magazines don't work. Fix this and we will make you stupid rich. PMAG came out, they became stupid rich, boom, problem solved. If the NFA didn't exist, we'd have massive leaps forward in full auto technology, probably railgun technology. There would just be massive jumps forward. However, this does save us a little bit, because also with the magazine ban, they did a trade deal with China that basically made it cheaper to import something from China than have it made here in America. So if you have Company A, you have Company B, and Company A is shopping from China, they will put out of business Company B because they won't be able to afford to keep up. So everybody was forced to purchase from China, which basically collapsed our industry, took it completely out. However, because of the crazy importation laws we have, guns were forced to stay in the country, and ammunition manufacturing. So you can't import ammo, you can't import gun. You can, but it's weird. There's a bunch of restrictions, and it's a bunch of crap you don't want. If those restrictions weren't there, we would be importing AR-15s from China. There'd be no in-house manufacturing. So let's say World War III breaks out. Everybody, and I mean everybody, is drafted into the military. All the AR-15 manufacturers in the country would get a sample, probably of an M16A2, because yes, the ACOG's great and all. It's awesome. The red dots are fine, but when you're talking about mobilizing millions of people just to match their numbers, not even to beat their numbers, but just to match it, it's not possible to make ACOGs and red dots and all that fucking goofy crap at that amount of time. So what you do is you do your iron sight rifle. It would probably be an M16A2. They may even go with an A1 sighting system. All the manufacturers in the world, or in our country, would get that particular platform. They'd all throw it into high gear, and they'd start pumping those rifles out. And that's what the troops would get, is M16A2s, iron sights. They might go with the M16A3, the flat top rail, so if there's any not broken optics out there somewhere, they can put them on there, but that's not going to happen. When we first meet, all our special forces, all our troops, all of our nice equipment will be crushed, because China will just overwhelm us with numbers, and they will take all of that, and they will reverse engineer it and use it if they want to on top of us. So, all that special glass, all those packs, a lot of the night vision, all that will be gone almost immediately within the first contact. So, the civilians will be going out there with M16A2s. They will get 6 months of training in boot camp and sent to the front line. And then all the manufacturers, all they will make is probably M193 or M855. I don't think they'll go with the A1, just because when you're firing billions of rounds, because remember, on average, it takes at least 50,000 rounds to take out one enemy combatant. Yeah, it only takes one to kill them, but it takes the other 49,999 rounds to raise the proper amount of hell and have a party. And it takes a while for the troop to get over not wanting to kill someone. They've done studies on this. When the troop first enters the field, they intentionally miss because they don't feel comfortable taking a life. After a while, watching their friends get shot, bleed out, having their own life in immediate danger, then they start actually aiming and firing. And this is for each individual troop. It's a crazy reality. The point is, they're just going to mass produce M16A2s, which would be a hell of a lot easier if the NFA didn't exist, and they already had the patterns and the auto sears made, but they don't, because the NFA is basically going to lose us World War III, if not bring us pretty damn close to losing it. So those will be pumped out, the ammunition will be pumped out, and we will ultimately, I'm hoping, pull a victory. But yeah, everyone's going to know somebody that died in that war, because they have that many troops, and they have that strong of an industry. They have our complete industry, except for firearms. Our tank parts, our jet parts, everything. And I mean, everything comes from China. We can't take an ore and turn it into a rifle. We got to buy semi-processed materials from China and then turn it into a rifle. Like, it's bad. It's why everyone's so against buying things from China and why they need to bring industry back into the country, because again, the trade deal in the NFA very well make us lose World War III. Who knows? Maybe we just carpet bomb China with nukes right away so we don't have to fight that many troops. I don't know. I don't think that would be acceptable on a global level. We'll have to see how things play out. Please shop at OnlyTacticalFans.com. Always, you can click on the affiliate links in the description down below. Just by clicking on that particular link. Even if you don't purchase what that particular link is for, just clicking on it and doing the Amazon shopping you were already going to do anyway, and a little kickback for it because you came there off my channel. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.